watch and see if it shows up here on YouTube. All right.
We're gonna be.
It's receiving. I'm going to start recording too, just in case.
We're gonna be internet famous.
Yeah.
All right. What is this thing doing?
It's streaming. I used Chat GPT to write us a nice description, and it suggested a really good title.
Oh yeah.
Exploring Wolves of Calla by Stephen King, a podcast discussion. I don't know if that's a very. I mean, it's a very that's a very on the nose. Like that's definitely what we're doing.
Are we gonna talk about wolves today?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and give you a bookmark. Here's my bookmark check-in.
You're probably about where I am.
I'm a little bit further than this actually because I listened to the audiobook some last night, but what I've been doing is I've been listening to the audiobook and then going back and kind of reading what I listened to make sure that I understood it.
All right.
Because I'm not going to lie, that last book we did that was like all flashback, there was swaths of that book where I was just listening to the audiobook and I was like, I don't even know if I'm retaining what is happening, but I have to get through this thing. So this one I'm trying to make sure that I really absorb it. But I guess we'll do that in the latter half of the show. We'll talk about where we are in Wolves of the Calla, and I'll give you an idea of where I'm at. The last thing I remember happening. I'm still in the portion where Callahan is telling the quartet about his past life.
Yeah, I mean that one's that his backstory goes on for a little while.
Yeah.
Um
It's cool though.
Yeah. I mean, and see, like, I mean, I guess you got to the very first part where he starts doing it. Like, again, you don't necessarily have to have read Sims like he kind of gives you like a little synopsis of what happened. But I mean, it's a really good book, and well worth reading.
I kind of want to now that I've read this. I kind of want to go read it. But so this is episode 24 of Fireside Palaver. I always hesitate to remember. I'm like, what's the name of this? What's the name of this podcast?
What is our podcast?
Fireside Palaver. This episode, we're going to be doing some chit chat about some Brandon Sanderson news, and then we'll get into Wolves of Calla. But before that, have you done anything cool? Did any frisbee golf this week? Anything interesting?
Speaking of frisbee golf, disc golf, I haven't played that in forever. Like,
it's been showing.
I need to get out there and do it.
I feel like just because I talk to you, I keep bringing up the frisbee golf thing as a joke, and I think that you know how people have the conspiracy that like your phone is listening to you and then displaying ads based on what it hears you say. I've been getting Reddit is like showing me all kinds of frisbee golf stuff now.
There you go.
So
it wants you to get into it.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I just got back from vacation, but it's one of those vacations where like have you ever been on vacation where like you can't wait for this vacation to be over with?
Yeah.
I was in the middle of one of those.
Boring or just
I don't know. It just was like a little bit of boring, but also like a little bit of drama mixed in. There was like kind of a crossing of my family and Becca's family on this trip because we were staying at a place that is like owned by Becca's family and is like their family vacation spot. They basically don't go. They go to one place, and it's this condo at Garden City, and that's like their when they go on vacation, that's where they go. They don't go anywhere else, and it's a nice place. But we've been going there. You know, Becca's been going there since she was literally a baby, and I've been going there since I started dating Becca. Which we did the math of the day. We're coming up on 20 years since we started dating, not since we got married.
Right.
And so for all these years, we've been saying we should invite my cousins from my side of the family from North Carolina to come down. They're up where your
Up
family
in
is. They're from
Wilmington.
Wilmington, yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
so they're already at the beach. So it's like not a big change for them. Um,
Right.
but we finally got the stars to align, and we got everything together where they're gonna come meet us at the Garden City condo, and we're gonna spend some time with them. We've been talking about it for years. Finally, this whole thing comes to fruition. Well, um, right from the start, right when we get there, they're they put a new lock on the door. They got a new code. No one told us the code. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We can't get in. We call we call Becca's dad. He gives us a code to get in, and then the code doesn't work. So he's on the other line trying to get like tech support for this new lock. Meanwhile, like it's going on 11 o'clock, and like we're in the parking lot. Like, what do we do? And my cousins are going to show up, and I'm like, I would be willing to buy a hotel for one room for tonight, and then
Right.
we'll figure this out in the morning. But now I've got two sets of family members, two different cars of people that are going to come, and I'm going to have to spring it on them like, oh, we're all going to have to get hotels for the night or go back home because we can't get into the condo.
Right.
I was even thinking, what if me and my cousin Chuck's a big guy. What if me and him just shoulder the door open, and then we'll go to
Right.
Home Depot tomorrow and fix whatever we
Right.
broke. But luckily, before they got there, we were able to get in the door. But that was just the whole weekend was just stuff like that. Drama around parking. They're threatening to tow cars. Just like it was just a mess. It was just a mess all the way around. But it brought up a topic for the show. So I was introduced to my cousin's new girlfriend, who was a very cool person, but they watch a lot of TV shows, him and her. And lately, I've been getting my story fix from reading books with you. I really have not been watching many shows recently. I only just
Right.
recently started picking up shows that I heard people talking about was good that have already passed that I'm now trying to catch up on. But I don't really. So I'm trying to talk to her about different novels, and I tell her about 11/22/63, and we go through that, and she's not like a big reader, so like there's not, and even if she was, there's no chance that she's also reading the same things I am. So I thought about how difficult it is as like a book person to talk to other people about the books you're reading.
Right.
Like if you're into a TV show, there's a really good chance that if you bring it up at work, out of four people, someone's probably watched it.
Someone's watching it. Right.
But I've almost never met another person that has read any of the Stormlight Archive books, unless I met them through like online or something like that. I've never
Sure.
I've never just in the wild spoke to somebody and been like, oh man, are you reading the Stormlight Archive? And they're like, oh man, I
Oh,
can't
of
believe,
course.
yeah, yeah, no, that just doesn't happen in this community, man.
Mm.
Like, how does that make you feel, David?
Right. Yeah. Well, with something like that, um, yes, because I mean, and I really like Sanderson. He's definitely growing in popularity,
Yeah,
but he's still it's kind of a niche audience.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so if you're not like if you're say like at a bookstore looking at Sanderson books, and then there's somebody there looking at them too, then you might
Now
feel
that has
like
happened to me a few times. That's
right,
that exact scenario. But outside of
but
that,
general public, like you can
yeah,
always go like you know you throw out the big guys like King or James Patterson or
yeah,
J.K. Rowling, like those. There's a
yeah.
select few that kind of fit
They're
into that category. We can say, "Oh, I just read the new King book," and everybody's like, "Oh yeah," or like
yeah, that's
whatever.
true. They're popular
Tom
enough.
Clancy,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, yeah,
John Grisham,
yeah. John Grisham. So, Tom Clancy, John Grisham. Every time I go to a flea market or a yard sale, and then I see
oh
books and I
yeah,
want to see what books they have, it's all
it's
John Grisham
always
and
yes.
Tom Clancy. Yeah, I don't know if that's just the part of the country we live in or if that's the way it is everywhere. But yeah,
Well, I
there's
think that's
always
everywhere.
2 dozen of those books.
Exactly.
And a few Left Behind series books in there too. Um,
But yeah, now what's really cool though is when you do find someone,
Your best friends.
you're like, yeah, I mean, you're all of a sudden like, wow, we're like the same.
Yeah.
And you really nerd out because,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I
uh,
haven't read enough King yet. If I read enough Stephen King, I will run into other people that have also read Stephen King.
right,
Um, and my cousin is a big reader, but he reads nonfiction like Roman Empire kind of stuff. Like he reads like
right.
about history and stuff. And it's like, what are you going to sit down and talk to somebody about? Like, let me tell you about the Ottoman Empire. You know, like,
Yeah, exactly.
are you all caught up on Roman war tactics?
Exactly. Oh, of course. Now my dad is a big reader, and he's sort of like a combination of the two because he'll read a
Yeah.
bunch of like nonfiction stuff, and then he'll throw novels in and stuff like that. Which I would love to read some cool history nonfiction stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
it's there's not enough time in the day to read all kinds of stuff. So
Dude,
um,
ain't that the
you got to
truth?
pick and choose. And like as far as TV, like God, I haven't been watching anything as like that because I just don't have time either.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I'm actually consuming on television. That literally used to be all I did was watch TV shows, and now I'm so far removed from it. I think right. I started recently. I started watching Moon Knight on Disney Plus,
Dude,
and
that's so good.
yeah, we watched the first couple episodes of that, and I do like it, but I never find the time to go back and watch it. I watched the
Right.
Invincible series on
Okay.
Amazon, the
I
cartoon.
haven't watched that yet either.
Yeah, it's really good, and it is like astonishingly similar to the comics. Um, and that's about it. I'm just catching up on things that I know are good. Um,
Right.
but
Well, actually, like in my free time, if I do have free time, I've been watching Lost. So,
yeah, that's right. We were gonna try to do like a rewatch podcast kind of thing. How far into it are you?
like,
I'm still open to that idea. I don't think anybody will
I,
watch it, but I love talking about
I
it.
maybe a couple, maybe episode 2 or 3 on season 2.
Oh, okay. So you've made it through season one. So what
Yeah.
we should do is I should watch all of season one, and then we should do a season one episode.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm down for it because, like, there's so much that like, so with Lost,
Yeah,
so much happens over the entire series. It's ridiculous. Like, just all kinds of craziness.
yeah,
I forgot, like, how much they really got into the story in season 1. And I'm like, wow, like, I didn't realize, I remember all this stuff. I was like, man, I didn't realize
yeah.
that was season 1. Like,
Yeah, season one really is like a trick because you think the show is one thing, and then everything changes in season two with the
yes,
vault. But up until that point, you think the show is just these flashbacks of the people on the island. And sure, there's like a
right,
mysterious thing going on the island, but really the story is like all about the flashbacks, and you think that's kind of the structure of the show. And then whenever you meet Desmond, you're like, oh, there's way more. There's way more going on the island than
right,
I realized, and so that's kind of it's like this weird bait and switch of because when season one was on, I watched my mom and at the time her husband, they've since divorced, but they would watch it, and
right.
I would be there washing clothes, and I would just kind of it was just kind of on in the background, and I watched all of season one that way, like not paying attention to it. It was just like, oh, this old person show that they like, oh,
Right, exactly.
and then whenever you got the hook at the end of season one and the beginning of season two, I was like, wait, what's this show? What's this all about? And so I went back and watched everything. Yeah, we should do a. I think that season one, if you wanted to take one of the seasons to condense to only one episode, season one is probably the one you could do it to. I don't know. Maybe we break it up into a few episodes. We do an episode per character, maybe,
Ooh,
or something like that. I don't know.
I
I
forgot.
always had an idea for a podcast, and I actually did record 2 or 3 episodes of it, and I never posted it anywhere, and they're long gone. Um, the Lost Fan podcast. I wanted to do a show where I interview fans of Lost
Right.
and talk to them about their favorite episode and stuff like that. Not necessarily a Lost recap show, but just every week a different fan of the show. But maybe I don't know. We should try to do something on this YouTube channel. And
I'm down for it. I've always said it's been my favorite show, and rewatching the first season, like
yeah,
just the character development in that show is just
I have some lost
beyond
books.
like.
I have some lost books we could try to read.
Yeah, I remember they did those.
I have no idea how they tie into the show, or I have no idea how if they're any good or anything. But
I remember there was a one that was about the plane crash or the plane being at the bottom of the ocean and the whole story around that.
oh, okay,
And I don't know if that's one you have. I remember that specific story, and then
I,
yeah, I can't remember the other ones, but I remember I almost bought it because it was about Charles Widmore and like all that stuff and
oh yeah.
how they did the plane and all that stuff. So
Well, uh, yeah, that's a hmm. I might start watching. I might start watching it tonight. The last time I watched Lost, I was watching chronologically Lost, which is where they put
I know,
every
right?
scene of the show in order. And so I haven't
Yes.
actually watched the show like proper in a while. I still have the. I don't have the files, but I still have the torrent files. So if they're still being seeded out there somewhere, I could download the Lost chronologically.
Chronological. I
Um,
feel like I downloaded that too, but I would have no
it,
idea
it
what computer I did it on.
it's an interesting way to watch the show because if you hear so many people say that the show is just it was just made up and like they just well everything's just made up, but it was like people say like oh they had no plan, everything was just kind of strung together without purpose, and then they had to come up with something at the end. Whenever you watch Lost chronologically and you see how
How
those
it fits.
how it fits, it all fits like
Yeah.
they I
It
mean
all fits. Yeah.
of course some things were made up on the fly, but it's very it's somewhere between the way Brandon Sanderson writes where he knows everything and Stephen King where he's just kind of writing as he goes, and
Right.
both
And
can be genius, and both are the way these two different it's somewhere in the middle. They had a lot of it planned out. um
there obviously there's things that happened in that show where like oh, what's his name? The guy that played Charlie, Dominic
yeah,
Monaghan. Is that
I don't
when
know
he
his name, but I
asked,
know you're talking about. Yeah.
he asked to leave the show,
Mm-hmm.
and so like any plans that they had for Charlie,
Yeah.
obviously couldn't. And different things like the
And
whole
the
thing with Michelle Rodriguez and
and Mr.
all that
Echo.
stuff. And then obviously Walt was supposed to be a bigger
Yeah.
character the way they were treating him in season one, and then he grew like 8 feet between seasons, and they were like, what
Yeah.
are we gonna do? Like, you either recast or move on. So I mean, like, so yeah,
Yeah.
obviously things like that change, but you can obviously tell from the very beginning, like from the second episode, when Lost holds up the two backgammon
Yeah.
tiles and is like, it's black and white, and that's the name of the game. And if you know Lost, he's telling you
Yeah.
what the story is going to be about. Like,
Yeah.
and it's really clever. So,
I'm not as
um,
connected to it anymore as I used to be, but one time I was at a Dragon Con and they were doing this Lost 10 Years Later panel. And at that time, I was like obsessed with Lost, and I was like trying to figure out all the mysteries behind, like, how did people think things are flaws, like how is it John Locke heals real fast from getting shot, and people are like, oh, it's just creative freedom in the show, but no, it's not. It's because the island was moving faster in time at that point
right,
because because they quit hitting the button, and it was catching up to the
right,
time where Penny's dad was looking for the island. The reason why he couldn't
right,
find it was because they had been hitting the button, which was
right.
stalling time. So like I was at a panel one time where I answered everybody's questions about Lost, and it like blew everybody away. But I'm so far removed from that. Like I was obsessed. I was obsessed with Lost back in the day.
That's
Um,
that girl that I work with that she watched it for the first time,
yeah.
and I was like, so did you get why Locke could walk after the
Oh
plane
yeah.
crash,
Yeah.
and like how Rose
Yeah.
didn't have cancer anymore? And she's like, yeah, I know. I didn't really figure it out. It's like, well, that's because it happened before he was paralyzed. And she was just
Oh,
like, what? Like,
I should splice
oh my,
in. I had to put a splice that
oh yeah, I
we're
know, right?
spoiling Lost. Sorry,
Spoilers.
sorry people, sorry people. Yeah, we should definitely do that podcast. Um, I want to tell you about some comics that I purchased while I was at the beach. So there was some good slash bad that came out of my vacation, right? Um, so we went to a flea market, and it was like a little mini jockey lot. Like, I guess for people that aren't from around our part of the country, like the jockey lot is the largest flea market, I think, on the East Coast, if not the
Really?
country. I don't know if it's
It could
the
be, yeah.
it's at least on
It's
the East Coast. It's huge. You can't look at
huge.
it all. You can't look at it
Yeah.
all.
No.
Um, and the last time I went there, there's like a comic shop at the flea market. And the last time I went there, he had good comics, but they're all in bad condition, and it's like dark and dingy. And he's still trying to sell them for like the price that you would buy them at a comic book store if they were in perfect condition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're just not. And so I go to this flea market, and sure enough, there's a guy there that has a ton of comics, and they're all pretty good comics. Um, he had the one you talked about in the last episode, New Mutants '98. He had he had a ton of books, but two that he had that I've not seen in person. I've seen him in person, like at comic book stores or at conventions, but I've never seen him in person in the wild at like a non-comic vendor. And that was Amazing Spider-Man 298, which is first Eddie Brock. Well, questionably, it is the first Eddie Brock. There's another Eddie Brock appearance that's earlier than that, but it's a little bit wishy-washy. Um, and then a Wolverine #1, which is just a classic cover. I don't really
Right.
usually collect Wolverine, but I wanted this cover. And I got both of these basically for the price he had listed for just the 298. And um,
Wow.
yeah, it was a pretty good deal. The 298 is in good condition. So he had $80 on this book, and I think he had like 40 on this one, something like that. And he ended up giving them both to me for 75.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, yeah, it's good. The
That's
the
really good.
the 298 is in good shape. I've looked
Right.
it over. It's really good. It's a little dingy, but it's like dry cleanable. Like it's not. There's no. I don't see any staining or any kind of damage that would require any kind of extensive um,
Right.
repair. But the Wolverine, on the other hand, I didn't see it until after I bought it. But down in this corner, if I can get it, I don't know if my camera will focus. But right over that stamp there's like some significant water damage.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
And then I started doing research on, well, how do you repair water damage? Which I've never done any kind of. I've never pressed or anything. Um, but I did some research, and there's like a oxidation bath that you can put a book in, which I don't think this. I would want to try it on something that I care less about before I
Right.
try it on this. But it didn't look crazy. But you have to remove the staples, which is a big faux pas.
Right.
If you send a comic off to be graded and they can tell you remove the staples, then you'll probably get a label that it's been repaired. So I pull out the book and I decide, well, let's see how bad that water damage really is. And I had not looked at the back when I was at the flea market, but it's way worse on the back. So that's all
Oh
the
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then up here, there's these bad places where
Okay. Yeah.
that's peeled off the color there. So I don't know. This book is probably unsalvageable, but the way I'm looking at it is, I bought the 298 and I got this one for free. So
Pretty much. Yeah. Exactly.
there's also a big fold. The camera's not going to pick it up, but there's also a fold in the corner of this one. But I think I'm gonna try to. I don't know. I'm debating whether I want to try learning to clean the water damage, and then at least from the front, it would be very presentable. You know what I mean? Like I probably wouldn't send it off to get graded or anything because the back is so bad. But at least
Right.
I could put the front cover on the wall or something. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna keep looking at flea markets for comics because so far I think my luck has been really bad. You get good deals, but you get beat up comics. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, I don't really know if it's really worth it in the long run.
Yeah, that's one of those like I think now, yeah, I mean, I prefer places like maybe like Second and Charles and
Oh man, I went there
um
and wore them out the other day, Second and
oh yeah.
Charles, and I did pick up some stuff, but it, dude, it is ours. At least our Second and Charles is a wreck. I mean,
I haven't been there in a
nothing
while,
is in
but
any kind of order. It is just a mess. Which I do enjoy looking through that kind of thing too.
right,
I love digging through dollar bins and stuff, but it's pretty severe. I wonder if the way Second and Charles works, because they sell kind of a little bit of everything,
right.
is um if your Second and Charles like has the comic guy working there, then they do a really good job of keeping it up and that sort of thing. But if you don't have the comic guy working there, then
Right.
it's just sort of like, oh sure, they take it and then they just put it out there.
They just
Um,
stick it in a box and say here. They
yeah,
don't organize or anything like that.
I want to get
But the
in.
good thing with that is they don't know necessarily what they
Yeah,
have sometimes, and you can find good things. Whereas like
that's what
a
I was
comic guy
thinking.
would be like, "Holy crap, look at
Yeah.
this! I'm taking that one."
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, man, maybe I can find like some good deals if they're not really paying attention. Um, I mean, I didn't buy anything worth anything, but I filled in some of my back issues.
Right.
Which I'm starting to question whether that's even worth it. I'm starting to think that I should just sell everything except for the keys for like $1 a piece just to get rid of them, and then just keep the key issues that I really care about. Um, I don't know. I actually have finally successfully sold a few comics on eBay, not for any amount of like major amounts of money, but I'm trying to like not just buy stuff, but actually sell stuff too.
Well, that'll
Um.
be the college fund for
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
12,
It's
13 years in.
yeah. Yeah. Um.
That that's what Cooper keeps buying pop heads. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why do you
Those.
keep buying pop heads? He's like, that's gonna how I'm gonna pay for college. I'm like, you have to go to a cheap college.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm in the pop market. think they have value. I don't know. It's kind of like a crypto
It's
thing.
weird. Yeah, I know, right?
But so are comics. It's all only valuable because other people. I don't know. I think that comics is a little less speculative than the pop thing. I think people buy
Yeah.
pops because they believe it'll be worth more. Whereas like comics is like a lot of the comics I buy is because they're nostalgic to me, and I'm buying my child. I'm buying a lot of stuff I buy is stuff because I grew up in an evangelical household, stuff that I saw my cousins had that I wasn't allowed to have. And so now
Right.
as an adult, I'm like I can buy those things. um but anyway, we got to talk about books here. Oh, but
Books. Oh yeah.
I
This is
want
a book
I
podcast.
want to get into fantasy. I want to get into fantasy collecting though too though. I want to find like some sort of old fantasy books to start looking for. I don't know what yet. I got to figure that out. Maybe there's an
Um,
artist. So a lot of those old fantasy books have like those classic
yes.
oil painted covers and stuff. Um, I might try to pursue a lot of those. But so we were talking about uh we were talking about um how some stories everything's plotted out in the beginning, and
Yes.
some stories are completely planned ahead. Some are fly by the seat of your pants, and then you figure out how to put the pieces together at the end. Well, I've always heard that Stephen King was a fly by the seat of his pants kind of writer. He just he what I've heard is that he writes it as he goes. Of course, he has some idea,
Sure.
and then develops it as he's in the process of writing it. Well, I really feel like Wolves of Kala is Stephen King finally saying, okay, these pieces that I've laid out across the Dark Tower series, we got to start putting those together
You got
now.
to put them together. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the way this book feels. I feel like um, this the quartet like has a purpose now. With, of course, they were on the beam, they were on the path of the beam, but now I feel like there's more of a, like, the end is in sight. and
Yes.
and specifically what I'm thinking about is the whole storyline of the lot in New York City that the Rose is in,
The Rose is in.
and there's like a threat to that lot, and now they have the sense of like they need to protect it. um and I can see that being what builds to I don't know. I mean, there's two more books, so I say the finale, but there's two more books, so I don't know how deep that storyline goes, but um
Deep River.
but while all that's going on, you have the sort of side quest of the Wolves of Kala, which, what a bizarre, this is like a bizarre Japanese anime storyline. Like
Oh, just
these
wait.
these people in this town, Calla Bryn
Calla Bryn Sturgis. Calla Bryn
Sturgis,
Sturgis.
yes, Calla Bryn Sturgis. They have been giving one of their children to these wolves every like 40 years or so. 20, I don't remember how many years, but
25 years, somewhere in that.
yeah,
It kind of varies, but yeah. So all the children, well, not all, but a majority of the children born
are
there
born
are born
twins.
twins,
Yeah,
and it's rare for a single child to be born. And then the
that's
wolves
right.
come and take one child and leave the other, and then they turn them root,
They
and
return
then
them
they bring them
root.
back.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
such a
the question
bizarre.
is,
And then the root children are like these like big, like they're like giants, but they're like big dumb giants.
yes. Well, they
That's
come. It says they come back. One of the creepy things about this is when they're telling this,
yeah.
and they come back and they're normal for a little. Well, not normal as far they're normal as far as size, not brains, but
Oh, I
and
forgot
then they're
about that. They get
and then
bigger.
they're like, and then they grow, and the guy's like, you can literally like put your ear
Yeah,
up close and hear the bones growing. And I was like, dude, that's creepy.
I
Like,
forgot about that. Yeah, and they have
um,
terrible headaches and stuff because their bones are growing so rapidly.
yes.
I forgot about all that. Yeah, I mean
And
that's
then
such a
they're
bizarre. Like, how did he come up with that concept? Like,
right.
and then there's
I
talk of
mean,
vampires in the mountains. They're like, oh, they might be getting them to the vampires in the mountains, but that's not confirmed. Um,
so
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and this one of the things that he's done as far as the other books is, you've been hearing thunderclap. Thunderclap
Mm-hmm.
is the end of the world and blah blah. So now they're like they're on the other side of the river from thunderclap, and they can see this, and now the wolves are coming out of thunderclap. So like,
Yeah.
so good. It's so I cannot wait for you to get to the end of this book. To me, this like the next three books are like really kind of mind blowing, and but this one is the one that just like throws back the curtains first, and
Hmm.
so this is kind of the my favorite because you're just like, wow, the revelations that come up. um and then like and you've got Susanna who's with child,
That's
and
right. She's been sneaking
um
off at night and like,
and dude, so okay, the one issue I have,
okay,
and it's the whole Susanna thing going off and eating. Number one, I find it hard to believe that she can sneak off and do that and get back and no one noticed,
yeah,
other
yeah.
than Roland.
Other than Roland,
And the only reason he noticed was because he happened to wake up and had to go to the bathroom. But like the fact that she was doing this, like especially in the water and murky water and getting muddy and all this
and
stuff, and
just like
like the
cleans herself
descriptions of,
off. Yeah,
yeah,
but
like her
there's,
squeezing the frog and getting all the guts all over, like
yeah.
that's
They make a point to say that she cleans herself off really carefully, but they only have so much clothes. Like, what could
right.
she'd have to? Yeah, that would be really hard to keep secret. Now, I do think that you know Eddie doesn't want to see it.
He
Like,
doesn't want to see it.
yeah, he knows
Right.
something's going on internally, but he doesn't want to admit it to himself. Of course, I've already read past the conversation where him and Roland talk about it.
Yeah, right.
But up and even in that conversation, I think he tells Roland yeah, yeah, I know something's going on. But I didn't want to admit it. Um, but even with that said, I think there's still not enough there to suspend disbelief that she could mire through all that murk and be able to hide that from everybody night after
Well,
night, you know.
and the other part of that is, and I think her hiding that is easier than the fact of what he describes she's eating
Mm.
and not have any kind of like. I
She
mean,
just
she
has like
literally.
heartburn. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he describes her picking up some rodent type thing and eating
Yeah.
it, bones and all, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, she has like whatever the child is, in that conversation, Roland's like, it's not going to be human,
Yeah.
but what is it? But even so, like, I mean, she's eating raw frogs and fish and rodents and bones and all that, and she's just like, I mean, she's still human,
Yeah.
like,
Can't be
regardless of what, you
can't be
know,
good for her.
yeah, cannot, and like, yeah, you would think something else would have, come up as far as that goes. But that's one of those things where I've read this series like so many times that I start looking for things like, yeah, but like, it didn't bother me. Like I can get over it. It's not one of those things that's like, oh, I can't put this
I
book down. How can she be eating rats and stuff like that? But
yeah. I think the reason why it's easy to get past is because if the story had been that this happened one night, just the night that we read about, whenever Roland sees her, and she's in like the banquet hall, and she's talking to people like she's Odetta and then Detta and then this third one,
yeah,
um,
Mia.
Mia, Mia, and if that was the only if Roland said, oh, that was this happened just this one time, then we would find that believable. I think the part that's unbelievable is that it's happening repeatedly, and I don't necessarily think that so I think that is said by Roland that it's happened
Right.
repeatedly, and then I think
Yeah,
it's
he said it's happened a few times.
right, yeah, but I think it's easy to get past because you can just it's inconsequential to the story whether she just did it once or
Right.
she did it
You
7 nights.
just you just
Yeah,
know that she's sneaking off and feeding her
right.
chap. That's
Yeah, yeah.
um so I don't know if you got that message I sent you in
Mm,
Discord,
let me
but
look.
I've been taking not like play by play notes, but some themes. Um so like, obviously the big thing that just started in this book is 19.
Yep. It.
Everything's going 19. They're seeing 19 everywhere in the clouds and the trees and the bushes and the dirt. Like,
Yeah. I
you
really.
know,
I
names are 19,
Yeah, yeah, everybody's names at 19 letters. Yeah, I
19
think
letters.
I thought that so 19 comes up in the first book, but then it's not really a big part and then they make it a
Right.
huge part of this. They all start noticing the 19 thing. And did
Yes.
Roland ever tell them that story? We know it as the reader, but did Roland ever tell them the stories of because that was even before he met Jake.
Right.
Um
I mean, you figure like, they've been together for a very long time. You figure he's told the story of um oh God, what was the name of that town?
um
Um
which that was 19. That was whenever it happened. That was
yeah,
all consequence of that.
yes, but like as he probably told them that before this whole 19 things
Mm-hmm.
started kind of occurring, so it may not have meant anything in his original telling it to him because they talk about uh in one of the books what happened with like the the weird church lady, the
Oh
Sylvia
yeah,
Pittston or whatever. Like I remember him telling them that story, but I don't think 19 was a thing at that point, so it probably didn't occur to him at that point, now it's a done deal. So I mean, you're probably not going to bring it back up or anything. But
I forgot all about
um,
her.
so like, yeah, I know, right? So like one of the other themes that keeps coming up, and it's been coming up in all the previous books, is authors.
Yes.
Um, so like in this one, you have Wayne D. Overholzer, who like the Aaron Deepno or Tower One tells him, about the Western from a Wayne D. Overholzer
Yeah.
book, and then they meet Wayne D. Overholzer, you know, before they get to the Calla. He's um, one of the big farmers. Not the same
Oh
person,
yeah. Yeah,
obviously,
yeah, same name.
but it's the same name. And of course, Wayne D. Overholzer is 19. Well, his name is Dale, and it had to be 4 letters for it to add up to
Right.
19. And,
Yeah.
that was the big thing, is everyone to know what his middle name was. And then, of course, Charlie Choo Choo, the author
Yeah.
name has changed from Beryl
Changes.
Evans to Claudia E. Inez Bachman, which is 19 letters now.
Now,
Um,
do you think that the choice to change that name was only to make it so that it was 19 letters, or is there more to it than
there's more to
that?
it. A little of both. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but like, I'd love to tell you something, but like,
It's all right. Another
um,
thing I was curious about, the scene where they're at the bookstore and Stephen King is on the board.
on the board, yes,
And Stephen King, I'm sure he wasn't on the board whenever
he was
Jake
not.
goes there the first time. Yeah, okay.
No, because that Jake mentions that that's not right. There's something different, and that was one of the things that was different, was that Stephen King's name was on the board.
And another thing related to Stephen King is Callahan mentions that he was at the castle of a king of the king, or something like that.
Yes.
Is that related to Stephen King, or should you even answer that
No,
question? No,
no,
okay.
it's not.
Because I was
So
thinking it's going to
you
turn
got to
out that
remember.
he was at Stephen King's house in some other time period or something.
So you got to remember the big baddie is the Crimson King.
Oh, true. Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
it's basically a reference to the king, that king, not.
I see. I see.
Um, but like, so not that you would, but don't Google that author's name, because big spoiler for anyone else listening to, don't Google that name. Um, Not a real author, but obviously we give away a lot. The other big thing is that like you get um, well, before we move on to that, other authors, Dickens, they
Hmm.
mention Charles Dickens, and the fact that like in Dickens tales, a lot of things happen where the same characters, um, like not magically, coincidentally, or however you put it, they always come together.
Yeah.
Like because he's talking about Balazar and Andolini, and he's
Yeah.
like, we and Eddie's like, we keep like regurgitating these same themes over and over, like
Yeah.
like Balazar and them, and you know Tower and different things like that. And it's is it coincidences? Is it something more that all these same characters keep coming together? Um, like he even says that people, places, and things seem to be being reused, and there's that whole
Hmm.
section is really good. There's Where is that? Let me find it. It was
Is that
I
where
put
Eddie
that.
is talking to?
It's when Eddie and Roland are
Yeah,
talking
and he's
about
talking about the 19 and in the
yes.
world of
Um
19 and all that.
yeah, so he says like but the way stuff from my world keeps showing up over here, that's not real. It's not sensible or logical either. It's just not real. Why do people over here sing Hey Jude? The
Mm,
cyborg bear Shardik. Where do I know that name from? It reminds me of rabbits, which I don't know if you know Watership Down and all that
mm,
stuff. That's the guy who wrote Shardik and Watership Down, all that stuff.
okay.
Um, all that shit about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It's just he's like it's just 19. We walk into the woods. It's like Hansel and Gretel.
Mm-hmm.
There's a road for us to walk on, muffin balls to pick up, and then he's like, and then all of a sudden, he says the joke is that out here, a billion miles from nowhere, we come upon a storybook town, civilized, decent, the kind of folks you feel you know. Maybe you don't like them all. Overholser's a little hard to swallow, but you feel you know them. And he was like, it's Calla Bryn Sturgis is basically the twin of Magus, like from Wizard and Glass. I mean, they have the same like talk. They
Yeah.
dress the same. It's a, they talk about Charyu Tree and the harvest and all this stuff. They wear the same kind of clothing, like sombreros. Um, but he says the storybook town has a fairy tale problem, and so the storybook people can call on a band of movie show heroes to save them from the fairy tale villains. I know it's real. People are going to die very likely, and the blood will be real. The screams will be real. The crying afterward be real. But at the same time, there's something about it that feels no more real than stage scenery,
Yeah.
and that like it. What is really happening is starting to dawn, not just on Eddie, but I think everybody's starting to get this same feeling that like this is weird that like all this stuff keeps happening and we keep getting thrown into like these weird storybook situations and like it's reminded of different authors and just
Yeah.
it's a good setup, like just
Without
to say it's a really good setup.
yeah, without having read the rest of the book or the rest of the series. And I know it's hard for you to talk about without revealing anything, but the vibe I'm getting from Eddie is that um, they knew that they were in Roland's world. They knew this was another world, a completely foreign place, and in the drawing of the three, he was forced to kind of take that in and to understand that pretty quickly. And I think now it's starting to dawn on him the connection that this foreign, strange land has to his land and to his time. And I think he's trying to make sense of why is there any connection at all? Like it's
Right.
why is there in the previous book where they walk through the Thinnies and they walk through Kansas, why is there a Kansas here? And it's a completely different Kansas, or there's
Right.
not completely different, not different enough. Like it's his Kansas, but with slight alterations.
Slight
And
alterations. Right.
I sort of get the vibe of like in the Matrix, like or in the Truman Show. Like I feel like Eddie is starting to feel like not only am I in this fantasy land and on this fantastic journey, but there's almost some performance or something that's being put on specifically for me,
Right.
in this. Um,
Oh, yes.
I can only liken it
Um,
to the Matrix, having not read the rest of the series, but
right. Well,
um,
I think the Truman Show thing is good. Like, I think
mm,
at this point the lighting thing has fallen
yeah,
from the sky, and Eddie's like, "Why is this light here?" Like,
mm-hmm,
kind of thing. Like, um, and and of course, like Eddie's trying to explain to him the whole thing about 19, but he can't explain it. But like Roland, Roland is kind of a holdout as far as the 19. I think Susanna, Jake, and Eddie buy into this 19. Roland's kind of like,
hmm.
it's interesting, but it's not, let's not look too much into it at
Okay.
this point.
Before we move on from that, so is it that Roland, and I don't know the answer. I'm thinking, I'm throwing this question out there. is Roland not bought into the 19 thing, or has Roland been seeing 19 for so long that he doesn't want to get distracted by it? Like Roland's
Well,
been
I don't
seeing
know.
19 for 200 years or however long he's been walking with
Right.
it ever since he left the town of, was it Toll? Was it Toll?
Toll. That's
Yeah,
it.
Toll. Ever since he left the town of Toll, he sees 19, and he's learned to put it in the back of his mind and move
Right.
past it. And but it's brand new to Eddie and the.
And at this point where we are, I mean, only thing you can go by is what he says. So,
What
and
does he
he's
say?
saying it's not that, he's saying it's not that big a deal.
Oh
So
yeah,
either he's keeping it to himself that there's more to it, and he's not said it yet, or, you know, he really truly believes it's not that big of a thing yet. But at this point where we are, you don't know. Um,
gotcha.
and you know, the whole, they're introducing themselves as the quartet of 19, and like, so, they're fully invested in 19, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Um, and so that's, obviously it's going to keep playing as a factor. Let's see what else we got up here. Another thing that is kind of a new thing is Roland having this rheumatiz or arthritis or whatever it may be
yeah,
that is steadily getting worse. Um,
yeah,
and he's hiding that from them, the fact that he's in like a lot of pain in his hip. And then, talks about his knees and feet swelling, but it's really, he says his right hip is like, really, really bad.
yeah.
Um,
It comes up a few times in the last two books, but I think that this is the point where it is really setting in for Roland that
yes,
he's not going to live out the rest of his journey. Or whether he does or not, I don't know. But he has the belief that he's not going to be able to continue his journey, and he's going to have to pass the torch to them. And so he's in an even more sense of urgency to prepare them and to move that along. I watched
right,
a documentary one time about the Hadron Collider thing, the God particle,
right,
and there was a whole section in that documentary about how the scientists that had spent their whole lives working to see the outcome of this experiment were just physically can't live long enough to get to see the outcome. They'll unfortunately have to die knowing that their work is now being passed along to like this next generation of scientists that are going to work on it. That's kind of where I see
right.
Roland at right now. Is he's setting up to pass this journey on to the rest of the quartet because he knows at some point he can't continue the journey.
Yeah, well, I mean, he even says that he was like, if it gets worse, if it gets too bad, I'll put a bullet in my head. I'm not going to be like
Yeah,
drug around
yeah,
and be a hindrance, if
yeah.
the shit hits the fan kind of thing.
I just recently read that part. That's not far from where I am, and um, he says that he wants to die on the path of the being. Like he wants to die on the
Right,
journey to the tower, and he knows that if he were to just like you said, get drug around by them, he's just going to slow him down, and so he won't let that happen either. So yeah, the implication is that he would kill himself
right,
before slowing them down, but he's also not going to just like retire in Calla Bryn Sturgis and
right.
trust that Eddie and Susanna and Jake are going to go
Yeah.
off and finish his journey.
He and Callahan will be bunk mates and let them go on
Yeah,
and do their.
yeah.
So the other thing is with Callahan and the fact that he tells him that he's got Black 13 that's in the church, like buried or whatever in the floorboards. And,
I
you
thought
know,
I thought Black 13 was an interesting name because I get what it means to us. 13's an unlucky number. Black 13 could also be related to gambling. Like there's like a bunch of different meanings that it could have. But in this world, I think it's odd that it would be called Black 13. Is 13 also an unlucky number in this world? Has that come up
I don't
before?
know. Well, I think
Because it could have been
one
Black
of the
19, you know?
well, I think the reason no, I think kind of it goes hand in hand. One is that yeah, 13 is a bad number.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also there were 12 colored balls and
Mm.
then the 13th one was black.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so I think that's kind of where they a combination of two. It was the 13th black, and it was the most powerful, most like sort of like the One Ring. There were other rings,
Right.
but
Yeah.
this one is the most powerful. Um, and um, again, I feel like there was a I don't know if it was in this book or because they've talked about Black 13 before in the last book,
And
but I
yeah.
think Roland says something about numbers and I don't think
Okay.
he necessarily says it's unlucky, but I think he's like, 13 is a bad number, and I think he mentioned like some good numbers or something. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think that's correct. That
I want to say I remember that, but you might be implanting that in my head. I don't know.
exactly. Yeah, right. And so there, a lot of stuff has happened this first part of the book. The other thing that happens is Toadash,
Yeah.
um, and the concept of you're going they go to New York. They're
Mm-hmm.
not really there, but they're there.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool how like people will walk around them and not know that they're walking around them.
Yeah.
And that people like avoid them, different things like that. And the first time it's just Eddie and Jake that go, and this is kind of when they realize that because that's when they see Balazar and Andolini,
Mm-hmm.
is that they're working for Sombra Corporation and however many Norse Positronics and all these people are trying to get this lot and Tower happens to be the one that owns it, which again, coincidence that
Yeah.
Jake happens to go to the bookstore with this guy that owns the lot that has the
His name
rose
happens to be Tower.
and his name happens to be Tower. Um, and again, it's same characters coming through, same themes, kind of thing. But they're they're able to sneak around and read the note that says that they're going to kind of it doesn't say that they're going to make him sell, but it basically says they're going to make him sell the
Yeah.
lot in a roundabout way, like and so now they realize that hey, we got to help these people with the wolves, but we also have to figure out a way to save the rose. And you know, Eddie's like, hey, not to say, but we could just, the rose is more important than saving some kids from some wolves, like in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
And Roland's like, yeah, a gunslinger can't do that. He's like, we're honor bound and duty bound now to save these people. Regardless of what they think, we are, this is what we have to do, and we can't shirk that for
Yeah.
something else, regardless of the importance of it. So
So
now you've got a two front war going on here. You've got, New York, and you've got the Calla.
so
Um,
I want to talk about both these things. But first, the way of Eld. So
the Way of Eld,
so
yes.
in this book, I remember when we read the first book, I said I don't even think Roland's the good guy of the story. Um, I didn't feel like Roland was a character that was bound by any like the way of Eld. He seemed like he was just completely hell bent on finding the tower at any cost, even so much so that he let Jake die.
Right,
But yet in this book, he is honor bound to this way of Eld thing, and he can't pass these people by if they ask for his help. He has to help them, sort of thing. So
right.
and I'm okay with it. It doesn't ruin the book for me, but I'm trying to decide if this makes sense compared to the Roland that we originally met in the beginning. Is it that Roland has changed so much over the course of his story? Because I do believe he has. I think we talk about that every book about how much he's changed.
Right.
Um, is it that Roland of the first book had kind of given up on that way, and then now that he's seen more of the world, they've went to these places where people have asked for his blessing and treated him like he was a saint, and then also just the
Right.
quartet has seemed to bring out more of the man that he used to be. And is it that he lost that person for a while and now he's there again?
I
Um,
think so.
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I've convinced
I
myself
think,
of.
you know, there's some flashbacks in this thing too, where well, not really flashbacks. He's dreaming about um, the Jericho Hill
Oh
battle
yeah, I forgot
and when
about that.
everybody dies, and like I think that like they were on the quest for the tower, but like everybody that was on the quest for him is now dead, and I
Mm-hmm.
think once that happened, I think it kind of got in his mind that, hey, I'm not going to let their deaths mean nothing. So nothing is going to stop me
Hmm.
from getting to the tower, regardless of what it is. And then he's, gets on the beach and, he has to go to these doors and, he realizes he's pulling in these people and it's basically another quartet and it takes him back, because he keeps comparing like Eddie and
Mm-hmm.
and Cuthbert and Jake and Elaine and things like that. And so like I think that sparks that whole, you know, I'm back to who I was. Now the other thing is that has nothing to do with story, more of writing is that he wrote the first book
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and with no plans on the rest of this,
yeah,
so he kind of had to do creative things to
yeah,
continue the
yeah.
story.
I think
um
that help. I think that helps the lore of these. Like part of what I like about the Dark Tower series is knowing that these books were written all so spaced out and like sometimes with a plan, sometimes without a plan. I find it
yeah.
really interesting to see how Stephen King then in the later books pulls it all together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I find that as interesting as I do the actual story
Oh,
that's in the book,
definitely.
you know?
Definitely, because like the whole the whole story of Callahan, I mean, like
Oh yeah.
Salem's Lot was one of the first books he ever wrote, and he's bringing in the character from
Yeah.
that book, and it's just like, that's really cool. And the as far as Salem's Lot, once Callahan, like when he says he like hops on that bus and leaves,
That's
like
right where I'm at, by
he
the way.
he's not he's as far as the book, he's not mentioned anymore.
Oh,
He's just some
really?
dude that leaves, like, and
Oh.
and so like from that point on, when he hits the bus, like this is a whole new thing
Okay.
that
So I
which
was
is
I was curious about that. So in this story he has a cross carved on his forehead.
yes.
And I thought that must have happened at the end of Salem's Lot.
Mm-mm.
Wow, that's crazy cuz
He even says that if you're right around this time, I don't know if you, but
he said
there's a
he
there's a part where he says, "Yeah, that didn't happen then; it happened later."
yeah,
And because
yeah, he did, but I thought that was all still in Salem's Lot.
yeah, yeah,
And in the physical in the book, the font changes whenever he's telling those stories,
yeah,
to like an italicized font, and I thought the italicized font was literally like, okay, we copied this from
it
Salem's Lot.
is. It is. It's 100% copied from Salem's Lot.
Oh wow.
Those parts are
Um, but yeah, where I'm at in the story so far is Callahan has gotten off. He convinces the bus driver to get him alcohol. He gets off the bus and he says that like it's the people walking around are like the living dead, and that's right around. I'm somewhere right at that spot is
right.
where I stop.
You know, which I'm literally right in that same spot, and I don't know if you've gotten another kind of coincidence thing is one of the people Callahan meets, and he when he's telling the story mentions the name of this person, the Roland, and their last name's Delgado,
Yes. Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're just like, okay, there's another theme that's like
Yeah. I even had to think like Delgado. Is that character in this book? No, no, that's the guy in the other book. He's dead.
Susan Delgado.
Yeah, Susan
Um,
Delgado, her aunt or father.
but the one of the cool things, like world building type things that he's kind of doing here too, is the vampires, which I think are very interesting.
Yes.
So
So
he says he's got three types, like type one, which are rare, which are like what you think of as vampires.
you're like an OG vampire. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, because he said there's probably like a dozen in the world, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and then you've got the type twos, which he was like, I've never seen or dealt with a type two, but he was like, he thinks they're just like maybe their metabolism is so fast that they can't, longevity wise, they don't last.
Hmm, hmm.
And he's like, the type threes are like mosquitoes. They do drink blood, but they also walk in daylight and they eat regular food and do
Yeah.
normal things. Um, and so like, he he has this power because of his interaction with Barlow, who's the big vampire, where he makes him drink his blood,
Yeah.
and he can sense vampires, he can see vampires, and obviously we haven't got past that part, so I'm no big leap, but
There's
that's obviously going to come up more.
yeah, and there's been no mention of vampires in this series up to this point, I don't think, but it's mentioned casually at the beginning of this book, and then Callahan, when he tells his story, coming from Salem's Lot, obviously it's the vampire story, and he tells a story about being forced to drink that blood, and I know that there's got to be a connection to that that seed that was planted about there's vampires in the mountains. Oh, it's mentioned twice, because there's once where it's mentioned that they think they're giving the kids to the vampires in the mountains, and then it's
Yeah,
mentioned later on where the guy that Roland's trying to convince to allow the quartet to help them fight the wolves. He
right.
says, "Oh, some people don't believe there's vampires in the wolves," and Roland's like, "I didn't say I was one of those people," or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, there's been in those instances, and I think in a couple, like, again, this could be me misremembering and planting things in your head, but I, I think there's been like an offhand comment about vampires before, where like somebody mentioned vampires and Roland's like, "Oh no, they're real," and
hmm,
then that's all. It's like just a little blurb, and
yeah,
it's never talked about again. You're just kind of in the back of your mind, you accept that there's vampires in this world.
yeah,
Uh, and but again, they don't make a big deal out of it.
yeah.
There's another interesting thing, and I can't remember where it is, so I don't know the exact quote, but it's when they go when they all go to the Rose, and then they get to the fence, and the sign is different. The outside that's on
Oh
the
yes,
thing about, and there's a new, instead of the turtle poem, there's one that says Susanna Mio, something like split daughter of mine.
yeah,
So she lost her something in the Dixie Pig, and so like
uh,
that's a big foreshadowing thing too. Like that
yeah.
Susanna, and it doesn't say Mia, it says
Right,
Mio, but
right. Yeah,
it's in the same ballpark,
yeah.
and like that whole thing is like he's, even though he's opening, like I said, the wizard's pulling back the curtains, he's still dropping
Mm-hmm.
these little breadcrumbs everywhere, and that's one of them, and um the whole, you know the baby, what is the baby, and you know is it human, and I think Roland says something like, she says, better not to name the devil, like,
Yeah.
so like
Oh, there's a
something's coming
that
there.
baby's a demon. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
And one of the things I did like about this, and it tells you how much of growth that Eddie has done
Yeah.
is that Roland is convinced that when he tells him he's going to be Roland or he's going to be Eddie from Drawing of the Three,
Mm.
and his reaction is completely different than what Roland thought it was going to be. He kind of, he's not happy, but he takes it in stride, and he's like, "You're my den,
Yeah.
like, you know, why should I?" That's your decision as Den to tell me or not tell me what you've suspected, and Roland's really taken aback by that, and you know, is there more to it? We'll find out. Um, I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that we may have
I also thought
missed.
there's a part. I feel like it's near where I'm at. I read it recently where Eddie says something to the effect of like he would let the wolves take every child in this town if it
Yeah,
meant that, or if there was even a chance that the baby inside of Susanna was
yeah,
really his. Um, I this is gonna seem corny, but I remember whenever never mind. I can't talk about it. I was related. I had a similar. I remember whenever Crusher passed. I remember telling Becca that, um, I if it meant Crusher could be alive, I would sacrifice every dog in the animal
right.
shelter.
You're
Um,
right.
but I don't know. That's a corny thing, but I relate
No, I
to
mean
what
it's
he's going
very
through.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, like the the question that we still haven't gotten to is what Susanna herself really knows. Like, and I'm
Yeah.
not talking about Detta or Odetta, but actually Susanna. She seems to
Yeah.
be like she's passing things off, and sometimes like when she's talking about, oh, it's just gas, and
I
you
think
feel like
she's
she's making things up, but then at the same time, you're like, it is like part of her,
well. She
like
knows she
again blocking
Yeah,
stuff
yeah, yeah. She's blocking stuff, but also she knows that she lost time, and the the
and the
one
legs.
toe dash, yeah, the one toe
Yeah,
dash. She saw that the clock changed, and she lost 11 minutes, and she didn't want to admit to herself at first that she had. And I think it's the same kind of thing. I think she's going through
right.
what Eddie is, where she doesn't want to admit that it's really happening. Um,
And she kind of comes out self, like I said, with the self realization that I had legs, I
yeah.
lost time, and
Mm-hmm.
then come back from losing that time, and the legs are gone. And she kind of puts two and two together that hey, maybe those weren't my legs.
And I thought it was
But
smart.
then,
Roland calls her
yeah,
Mia to see how she reacts,
right,
and
and she
she
doesn't
she goes
react at
along with
all.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was smart. Um, yeah, all the Todash
So
stuff is really cool.
yes,
I didn't like whenever it first came up. I kind of just thought, oh, it's a dream sequence, and then whenever it became a bigger part of the story. I like I like all the time travel stuff. I like that in the Drawing of the Three, and I like whenever they do that in this series, and it's a good fit for the series, but they haven't figured out how to influence the world yet. So the problem they're
right,
going to have is how do they save the lot? How do they save the Rose whenever all they can do is watch things happen? And I think this is where they
right,
need Black 13. And this is how it
yes. So
connects
they
to the
can
other story.
physically go, like
Right.
actual go. Um, which so like again, he's been dropping things in previous books like the Manny.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like the Manny that's who they are. They travel between worlds. They do, that's what and then they happen to come across, a group of Manny that live outside of Calla Bryn Sturgis. Um, and Roland has a discussion with the old grizzled Manny guy, but you don't know what it was about yet. And then Black 13 is there, and and they realize, because they have that conversation where they're like, oh, we'll just go back to 1974. We'll get a couple $1 million. We'll come back, then we'll go back to
Yeah.
like whatever year it is, 77, 80, whatever. We'll give tower, that money. We'll save the lot, and then we'll do this, and we'll go to this other. And Roland's like, man, I've been walking this earth for 1,000 years, and that's the first door I've ever seen. When I saw the doors on the beach,
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
y'all acting like there's just
No,
doors
there's doors
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah.
And so, like, you know,
Yeah, that's I don't remember the conversation with the Manny. What?
it's they don't you don't know what it is. Eddie at the when the before he does the rice dance and they're at that
Oh yeah.
gathering,
Yeah, I forgot
Eddie
about
look
that. Yeah.
Eddie looks across the crowd and he sees Roland and him talking, but he doesn't know what it's
Oh.
about.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I kind of remember that. Which in the audio book, so you told me that the narrator changes at this book,
Yes.
and God, I do miss the old narrator for Eddie and
Yes.
Eddie's brother. It, it is so I get lost having gotten used to that. When I read it, I'm reading it in that voice.
Oh, I do too. I listen. I hear Eddie in the
Yeah.
old voice.
And if I'm
Yes.
listening to the audiobook, I get confused because I'm listening for that accent, and then when it
Right.
doesn't kick in, I'm like, wait, is Jake or Eddie talking right now? And
You know.
I was telling Becca about the story on when we were driving to the beach this past weekend, and um, I she said that as I was telling her about Eddie, I started talking like real fast and doing the Eddie Dean thing, and she was like,
A
"Oh." I didn't
New
even
York
realize.
accent.
I didn't even know I was doing it, but she said I was doing it. Yeah, I miss that a lot. I miss the.
I miss like so the guy that does the next couple books is really good. Like, and he's
Yeah,
done other Stephen King books, and I like him. And his Roland is really good,
yeah. I
and
like
all
him
that
doing
stuff.
Roland better
Right,
than the
but
previous
like,
guy. Yeah,
Eddie was like, um, Frank Mueller had that New York like
so perfect.
kind
Yeah,
of wise ass like accent
and
perfectly down.
thank God he was there for Blaine
Yeah, I know,
destroying
right?
Blaine, because that would have not felt the same with
No,
this guy. Doing all the New York jive, like
right,
terrible jokes to piss off Blaine. It fits so well with that previous guy because it was just like that strong New York accent, just giving somebody shit for no reason.
right.
That's perfect.
All right. So, what do you
Listen,
think is going to happen? What's your
oh my goodness, what do I think's gonna? I have no clue. Normally, I have some concept of where the story's going, but I have no clue. So I think the story in New York is probably the one I have the biggest grasp on. I think that I think that they need Black 13 in order to have any influence on that storyline. So they're gonna need the help stop the wolves. Um, they, but I think that what they're gonna find is that no matter what they do, they can't protect that lot forever. So let's say they give Tower enough money that he can tell Balazar to f off, and he doesn't need the he's not going to be pressured into selling the lot. Um, like Tower's going to die one day. There's will his son
right?
sell the lot to the next guy? Like there's people are going to be bidding on that you know
Well,
forever.
the one thing that they did mention is that they think Tower may be homosexual
Okay.
or something. Maybe just not interested in women of some sort because they said he is basically the last one. And so, like, what happens
Oh, if he doesn't
when
have
he
kids.
does? Yeah, he doesn't have kids.
I
What
was
happens if
wondering.
he
I was
does
like, what
pass
does that have
away?
to do with anything? Okay, so if he
Um,
doesn't have kids, okay,
like, what would happen to it? Like,
the
kind
tower
of thing.
line.
Yeah, would it
Yeah,
go up for like public auction type
yeah.
thing? Like, because if let's say he decided not to sell, you know,
He would have
Andolini or
to.
somebody could just come in and assassinate him. And
Yeah.
if he didn't have it wheeled or whatever
Right.
to
Right.
go
Yeah.
somewhere, like it's New York, that's prime real estate. They're gonna
Yeah.
they're
I
gonna
didn't
do
think about
something
that.
with it.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's no. So for me, that storyline there's no end in sight. They're gonna have to. They'll come to that understanding, and I don't know where that takes the story, but and then with the wolves of Kala, I think the wolves are gonna show up, and they're not gonna be what we believe they are. Um, and
So
and
there's go
well,
ahead,
and also the robot guy. I can't remember his name.
Andy.
Andy. Um, I think the wolves. I think that Andy is like a, he's a tattler. He's an Alexa reporting back to FBI. Oh crap! I just said the word. Um, I think that the wolves know what's going on in the town because of Andy, and so they're going to show up with the knowledge that the quartet is there to help fight them.
So you
Um,
have kind of along that same vein is like they give the description of the wolves,
mm-hmm.
which there's like kind of a discrepancy how many 40, 60, 80,
Yeah,
whatever, but they all ride gray horses. They all in which, even, there's the whole look between Eddie and Roland when they mention that, and then they discuss it later like, this is a world where, whatever happened, and livestock is not, you know, perfect, and you got muties and
yeah.
all this stuff. But here you're telling me that you have anywhere from 40 to 80 of the exact same color, perfect horses, and these things all wearing like these gray suits with green cloaks and masks, and
And
they
they said
have
that they're like metal masks, but they
they're like
rot
metal
like
masks.
flesh.
Right. And then like
That's
they
weird.
have things called like fire sticks and
Yeah.
these sneech ball things that like
Yeah.
seek out people and like cut them to shreds. And then what else? There was something else too, and I can't remember what it was.
It
There's like, but
it almost sounds like I don't know if this is where it's going, but to me it sounds like it's going to be like one of those cases where it's not gray horses, it's motorcycles or something. You know what I mean? Like it's something that the person describing it can't understand. And the closest
right,
thing they can understand is a horse. But really it's like some kind of gray vehicle of some kind. And obviously the fire sticks and the snitch balls are some sort of futuristic technology. Like they're like, if Roland's world has been like what we've seen of it so far, constantly stuck in the past, these are somehow people from the future um, that are coming in, and I don't know, but what would they? No matter who they are, what is their need for these children, and what are they doing to them? Why are they giving them back? That shows. So in some ways, that shows some like sense of compassion or empathy. The fact that they even give the kids back. I realize that whenever they come back, they're ruined or whatever. But why
right,
even give them back in the first place? Like, why would they even
yeah.
send them back?
Why not
Um,
just kill them or whatever?
yeah, there's some element to this story that I don't know yet that is going to somehow change my perspective on the wolves and who they are. But I got no idea. I got no idea what it's gonna be.
That's one. Uh,
And it's
I'm
so
just telling
specific. It's so specific. Like it's like if you were coming up with this story and you were coming up with the part of the kids being abducted and then coming back as giants and dumb. If you came up with that part first, I don't understand how you would just. That is just such a bizarre concept that I feel like it must be that is the second like Stephen King plotted out this story and then he knows that whatever this is at the end because of that they come back big and dumb. You know what I mean? Like
you. Right.
like so to me that is it's a clue that I couldn't possibly figure out. But to me that's not just random. Like that is a clue to whatever is going on at the and then there's not even enough like I haven't even given much thought to like what is going on and like what Thunderclap is. The only
Right.
thing that I care about Thunderclap right now is how it connects back to this town because Thunderclap is where the wolves come from, and it's whatever is happening to the children is happening there, but beyond that, I've not even given any thought to like what it is or what it might look like.
Yeah, other than that it's dark and
Mm-hmm.
there's wolves and vampires and
Yeah,
whatever else kind of monsters may be there. And then
yeah,
the tower at some point.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It's definitely
Just
a
read the
weird one.
rest of it tonight.
Yeah, I do
Because I
need to.
really,
I do need to do some serious reading to get past. I keep getting stuck in this one part.
I really can't wait for the reveals that happen in this book to get your reaction because it's so freaking good. Like, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I'm excited about it. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know what's coming.
Yeah, it's gonna blow your mind. Yeah, I mean, you're in the there's like a huge ballpark. You're in a seat,
Yeah,
so but there's a whole big ballpark. So you're
yeah.
he leaves enough clues to where you can kind of, you know, figure some things out, but it's still gonna just
Oh,
blow your
I
mind.
haven't put it together. Well, I I'm excited to read what's next. I think this was a cool episode, and we did it live, so I don't even have to edit it. It's already posted,
I know, right?
and we'll get together next week and check in again. And we didn't even talk about the Brandon Sanderson thing.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
We'll save it for next week.
Right.
All right, and peace. Thanks for watching.
See y'all later.